Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Friday, November 28th, 2025, so happy Turkey Sandwich Day to all those who observe. And today we have a special treat for you. When I was at the CFSA conference down in South Carolina, I got a chance to sit down with Noah East of Wild East Farm that is in western North Carolina. But anyway, Noah and I got to chat about what their farm looks like and their sort of long-term plans for it, recovering from Hurricane Helene, and how much they earn right now on their gardens versus the rest of the farm. And in that vein, Noah is super generous with sharing all those details about revenue and about how much they're paying themselves in year 3 and so much more. If you want to understand what is possible with a good plan for a farm business, this is a great conversation. And not only have we featured Wild East Farm before, and I will link the video that Jackson and I did with him in 2024 in the show notes, but I want to make sure to point out their awesome YouTube channel, Small Scale Revival, which I will also link in the show notes, and maybe Mike can put it up there on the screen somewhere for those watching on YouTube. All right, enough from me. This shot in a hotel room in South Carolina is my chat with Noah East of Wild East Farm. So let's do it. Noah, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here and excited to be at the conference.
Yeah, and welcome to the conference too, which has been super fun. I just got to see your talk today, and that was great. Just so many details, and hopefully we can share a few of those here. But one of the things that I think you do really well is you discuss a lot of the, sort of financial details, and also just how it breaks down, costs, expenses, labor, how you divide a market garden from everything you're doing. I think all that stuff is really cool. So maybe though for this, let's introduce a little bit what your farm is and all these different enterprises. Mm-hmm. Maybe just give us a baseline overview.
Yeah. When we started Wild East, we had spent time formulating the vision of what do we want it to look like year 1, year 5, year 10, and on and on. So for that reason, the farm currently looks different ways right now. We started out planting 12 acres of mixed fruit and nut trees. That's part of that long-term plan, and took to heart the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago, and the second best time is right now.
Yeah.
But, we wanted to be on the farm full-time from the get-go, so those are growing up and in the background and integrated in the landscape. But we also started pastured poultry and market gardens to be quick turnaround, high cash flow farm enterprises that could have us farming full-time from the start.
Okay.
So it's a mix of those things primarily.
Yeah, and so talk a little bit about where you are, maybe, and kind of just those basic details as well.
Yeah, so we're in the foothills region of western North Carolina,
okay,
where the Piedmont turns into the western Blue Ridge. So bit lower elevation, still a mountainous terrain, and we get a longer season and a bit warmer shoulders than the mountains, and we also get a bit cooler and milder conditions than being deep in central North Carolina. So it's this interesting little unique bioregion being right between the two.
Did you say what ag zone that technically is?
It feels like it almost depends on the year, honestly. I think technically it's 7B.
Okay.
But I have neighbors, folks that live within an hour of me that are 7A. And folks that live in the other direction that are 6A, so it's all just in this right on the border of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean any sort of growing in and around mountains is complex in that way because of the way that the air comes in, the way that where it settles. Mm-hmm. And then you also we talked to Lyric last year, as listeners may remember, right after the hurricane. Mm-hmm. Can you discuss a little bit about that? Yeah. I know I hadn't primed you to talk about that, but I'm just now thinking about that was such a big event.
Conversation was so acutely after, and she told the story beautifully of what happened. I mean, region-wide, there was devastation like no one had ever seen. And just like you were talking about with the cold and the conditions in the mountains, the hurricane and the flooding affected different areas kind of in that same way. So we, in the moment of the hurricane, we had floodwaters come up 300 feet into our pasture, and we were like knee deep, and the winds came up to 85 miles per hour. So like there was this period of not really knowing how bad it was going to be during the storm, the long-term fallout. But we, in our location, ended up being very fortunate that once the water receded and we took stock of everything, there's a lot of trees down in the woods, and we lost a caterpillar tunnel that we had like just built the week before. But besides that, it was like, okay, the fields are wet, but everything's relatively okay. So we like immediately shifted to like, how do we get all of the food we have on the farm to people who need it?
Yeah.
And we're able to mobilize with local partners to make that possible, and still get paid for it. So it was like this beautiful thing where people were getting food for free, and we were getting it to town, and they were able to compensate us. And then, I think once things kind of settled, we took the time to clean up a bit. And there's still some cleanup. I mean, there's several acres of woods that is just, we just have to get around to cleaning up big old oak trees that came down. But we got lucky, relatively speaking. I know a couple folks whose farm just like, there was no more farm after the hurricane.
And so it didn't quite reach your gardens, like it wasn't washing out.
No, and that's partially like a function of the design of the farm. Like the best soil on the farm is closer to the creek, like in the low bottoms.
Yeah.
And we just knew that flooding was possible. Like we'd seen it we'd been in the region 10 years prior to starting the farm. And it was the choice of like, let's build up some poorer soil that's in a way more safe place from flooding, rather than let's just start the gardens where the best soil is. And we're grateful for that, because if the gardens had been where the best soil is, they would have been under 4 feet of water that day.
Honestly, it's kind of become practice for me when people are talking about where to start their gardens. I'm always like, not a floodplain. And they're like, it's been, it's a 1,000-year floodplain. I'm like, not a floodplain.
Yeah.
I mean, especially anymore, there is no such thing as a 1,000-year flood. They happen. Yeah. Yeah, they happen whenever.
Yeah, and it's like, I think it's like a risk tolerance thing. It's like,
yeah, sure.
Grow your garden in the floodplain if you feel like you can bear that possibility actually playing out.
That's a good way of putting it, yeah.
And then other folks don't like really have the option, but like that's the only place they have access to. But something that was really inspiring was all of the farms I know that got wiped out like that, they got so much help from their little pocket communities, and they were back growing and selling veggies like the following spring. So that like even some older folks, like people in their 50s and 60s, who like it could have been a time where they're like, maybe we put the shovels down, they just were like, no, like people need us in the community. So that was inspiring to see.
I love that. I mean, I hate the circumstances that brought it about, obviously, but when you get to see community in action, it's just like, it is really a thing, and it's a really powerful thing. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's a story that I've heard. I mean, being down here in South Carolina, but talking to a lot of people from North Carolina, just that's one of the first things they say. It's like people just came together and made things happen.
Yeah, immediately. Yeah, it was in both in like a direct way as well as just people just chipping in the ways that maybe no one noticed. Like people going up old back roads and just cutting the trees out and seeing, like, they don't even know if someone lives back there, but just checking in and clearing roads. No one asked them to do it. It was a really beautiful kind of time for the community.
Yeah, that's cool. And I mean, it makes it stronger ultimately, just to, going through those events that ultimately brings a lot of people together. So that's great. Mm-hmm. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the marketing side of things and sort of your venture towards wholesale, which I think is really interesting. So, BRB.
Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. Farmers who partnered with Farmhand say they grew an average of 63% this year because it's more than software. Farmhand is your business coach and assistant, helping to sell out, save time, and grow smarter with real data from real farms, shaping websites that convert, campaigns that sell, and fulfillment systems that run smoothly. Curious what that looks like? Meet the founder, Ari, at farmhand.partners/no-till and see the same insights and support the fastest growing farms rely on every week. That's farmhand.partners/ no-till. Today's episode is also brought to you by High Mowing Organic Seeds. High Mowing Organic Seeds is celebrating their 30th anniversary with 47 fabulous new varieties for 2026. Highlights include downy mildew-resistant cucumbers, a poppy that looks like cotton candy, and 12 new tomato varieties. High Mowing offers more than 750 varieties of certified organic, non-GMO vegetables, flowers, herbs, and cover crops, all trialed for optimal performance in organic growing systems. High Mowing has the professional quality seeds and supportive grower reps to get you from seed to harvest. Visit highmowingseeds.com to request a catalog and use code 26NOTILL, all one word, 26NOTILL, for 10% off your order of $100 or more. That's highmowingseeds.com. All right, back to the show.
All right, so Noah, one of the things that you all have done that I think is interesting and maybe counter to like what a lot of market farms do is that you've moved a little bit more towards wholesale, or at least you've like embraced wholesale in a way that not a lot of the smaller growers do. Can you talk a little bit about that and those outlets?
Yeah, I think it was front of mind because the farm that I had been managing for 3 years before starting Wild East was 8 acres of tractor-based organic that was 100% wholesale. So it was like a game I was familiar with, and I knew all the pros and cons. And in my mind, starting Wild East, it was like, if we can get the right wholesale rate, this can still work on a small scale, right? Especially prioritizing it early on, where it was just Lyric and I in year 1 and having a small team in year 2. Whereas we want to produce vegetables, we want to be market gardening. What's a way that we can be selling the food that kind of like reduces the workload on harvest and post-harvest stuff in the early years? Like because we were doing so many different things, we were trying to simplify where we could.
Yeah.
So taking on a 50 or 100 member CSA as a goal in year 1 or 2 was just like, that's just too much for our diversity of goals. So that's kind of why we embraced the wholesale. And because of that role and some of the roles Lyric had in the community before starting the farm, we knew folks who were executive directors or owners at these wholesale organizations. So we already had these pre-existing relationships where they were excited that we were starting a farm and kind of had the customers there before we even got started.
Yeah, that's something you talked about in your talk, and it's something I've thought about in a way of like, and I'll say this to new and beginning farmers a lot of times, that you are like, you have an opportunity as you're starting your farm before you've grown a single thing to start getting customers. And it's kind of what you were saying there with Lyric working with these organizations of like developing these relationships, or like an example I've often used is like, when you're starting a farm, get a part-time job at a restaurant or like a place that you may want to sell, a grocery store, whatever, because you're going to need that capital. So like, you're already going to have to be doing maybe a little extra work. And why not be in a position to start building those relationships so that when you do start production, you know what they want, you have a relationship with those people, and they want to support you because you helped them. Yeah, and maybe you can talk a little bit about like specifically like what those organizations do and how they get your food out.
Yeah. So we there a couple of them are nonprofits, several of them are for-profits. I guess on the for-profit side, there's a few places in Asheville that have online storefront, kind of direct-to-consumer box program on their end. So they don't call it a CSA, but it's like a CSA where folks can go on their website and just buy whatever is available. And then those orders come through and go to the farmers. So the wholesale folks have their little markup, and they still pay us a really fair rate. So like, for example, we sell a bunch of kale to them for $2.75 a bunch and sell it at market for $4. And like, there's a difference there. But if we can sell 20 bunches of kale at market consistently, but we can sell 400 bunches a week to these folks, like, it makes it really work and has really good cash flow. And then the nonprofit side has had a lot of funding until recently through the HOP, or Healthy Opportunities Pilot Program, to buy in the food and then redistribute it to folks who would not otherwise be able to afford local, organic, really high quality food at no cost. So they're paying us a fair rate, and then end consumer is paying nothing. With the funding being cut, like that pool not being there what it was, they still like were able to build up the infrastructure and the community connections. So there's volatility right now, but they're still pursuing that avenue. And we're really like fortunate and grateful to have started a farm in a place at the same time that these kind of programs were popping up, such that a good amount of our food, like 40% of our food sales to date, have gone to folks at no cost to them.
Yeah, that's so cool.
So it's like a rare and beautiful thing, and that's another reason we really have embraced these partners. You know, it's not all going direct to consumer at like a very high price like local food can tend to be.
Yeah, that's. I mean, one of the things, obviously, I feel like when I come to North Carolina or South Carolina, like I see a lot of great organization on that sort of front, like the sort of food hubs, all the aggregates that exist. Like it is, I don't see that a ton in Kentucky, but those aggregates are like they're really valuable, and I wish people who want to be involved in food but aren't necessarily like wanting to be farmers, or maybe they it's not, it's beyond their capabilities, they're older or whatever, or they have a different level of expertise. Like that is an area that farmers like ourselves can use. Like that's huge boon to the farming community, to have people who organize these things, who do the distribution side, and then give us that consistent market to be able to produce food and sell food that way.
Yeah.
And another thing you kind of touched on there in the beginning of this segment was just talking about the sort of simplification of it when you're harvesting big bulk, kind of all the same thing. Oftentimes, you kind of know for weeks exactly how much you're going to be selling.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that, like ways in which maybe you've made that efficient, or does that make sense? Like how it's made things more efficient for you?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if the market's there, that's the main thing. Like it enables us, in the past several years to kind of designate different blocks in our half acre to like, these 25 beds are just the brassica plot. So it's like, that's very simple.
Yeah.
Say 8 of them are kale, 5 of them are collards, like on down the line. We can plan very simply because we can have those conversations ahead of time with these folks and say, how many bunches of this do you think you can buy a week? And they'll tell us, and it's like, okay, we can put that into the crop plan. And, it doesn't always shake out exactly like that, but it does simplify it where, on the planning side as well as on the harvest side, like just the efficiency of picking a lot of one crop versus, okay, I'm getting 10 bunches of this, okay, 10 bunches of this. We do that as well for market and our small CSA program. But, it's nice having the mix of the two for the planning as well as, like, the harvest efficiency side. And, like, to make it more efficient, there's little things that I learned at the previous farm where, like, you go out in the field and you don't just have, like, a giant wad of twisty ties. Like, you're counting, if 20 can fit in a box, you're like counting out 20 and putting them in each box the day before. So you go out and it's just like, I don't have to do any counting today. It's just there's 20 in here, boom, it's in.
Yeah, counting and then recounting.
Yeah, it's like,
wait, did I harvest 20?
Yeah, taking them all out of the box, like, oh crud, there's 16 in here. There's eliminating little stuff like that is something you kind of have to learn with the wholesale model because you are dealing with a lot of numbers and it has to be precise for the customers to be happy. Whereas if you meant to bring 100 bunches of carrots to market and oops, I only brought 98, like there's not really a consequence there.
Yeah, that is kind of one of the more daunting elements, I guess, of selling wholesale. Is like there is an expectation of consistency. There's an expectation of getting the number right to the T, especially if they're doing like boxes that they sell CSA style. They expect everything to be the same, and then if it's not, then they have to scramble to figure out how to solve that.
Right.
I think those little elements, like we used to count out rubber bands. We do them in 20s or 25s, and then that way we just be like, all right, I need 4 25s, that's 100, put them on our wrist and go, or whatever that we're doing. And yeah, that makes even that little time that we'd spend, like you were talking about, putting the twist ties in the box, like that little time we'd spend getting that stuff organized, like made a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I was talking earlier in my talk, like front loading mental work as much as possible so you're not doing the mental work while you're doing the physical work, I feel like makes everything go smoother, like kind of separating those two as much as you can. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because when those two things clash, it is exhausting.
Yeah.
In a way that just like nothing else is exhausting.
Yeah.
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 No, that's a great way of putting it. All right. Well, we're going to take one more quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about like farm revenue and how you break out the gardens from your other enterprises.
Yeah.
So be right back.
Today's episode is brought to you by Johnny's Selected Seeds. Johnny's Selected Seeds is a proud supporter of Growers Daily. At Johnny's, they do more than sell seeds. They grow them. They trial them to see how they perform on Johnny's research farm in Maine and across the U.S. and Canada. Only the best varieties are added to their catalog and website. When you need proven varieties you can count on and detailed guidance from seedling to harvest, consider Johnny's your trusted growing partner. JohnnySeeds.com. That's JohnnySeeds.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Marble Seed. The Marble Seed Organic Farming Conference attracts a wide range of regenerative and organic farmers for 3 days of skill development and community building. Farmer Drew Kramer said, "Going to Marble Seed was so invigorating at a time when I needed it most. I picked up tools I'm already using." The conference is the final week in February in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Early registration opens December 4th at conference.marbleseed.org. That's conference.marbleseed.org. All right, back to the show.
All right, so like one of the things that I think you do a really good job of is sharing a little bit about like how the revenue breaks out for your farm, some of the expense stuff, but also like when you're stacking all these enterprises, that sort of thing can get complicated. To be like the garden's doing this much revenue, the pastures are doing, the chickens, the broilers are doing this much revenue, et cetera, et cetera. So like, can you talk a little bit about like philosophy there and then just maybe even some technical details about how it works?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's complex and it introduces more to manage in the tracking and the back end and all of that. We've got a good system that's relatively simple of just tracking expenses by category. So we have to be diligent about holding on to every receipt and holding on to every, like doing that bookkeeping diligently, because if I see something come through from Lowe's Hardware, I need to know if that went to the broilers or if that went to the gardens. It's not just like to the farm for it to be accurate, right? But we've developed good systems to make that possible, and a big part of that is just keeping up with it month by month. So every month I sit down, it takes me about an hour, and I just log all of the expenses from that month in market garden, broilers, pigs, turkeys, like general farm. Rent, payroll. So they all have their own categories. And then we do the same with income for each thing, which is a bit simpler. Because that's all kind of set up digitally anyways. And that lets us look at P&L, profit loss, each month for each enterprise and kind of get this whole financial snapshot of the year of like, when do the meat enterprises kind of, assist the leaner months in the market garden? Or when do we kind of run low on stock of the meat, but the gardens are high? So like having multiple enterprises can buffer cash flow fluctuations.
Yeah.
And tracking it and looking at it helps us plan accordingly, like the right number of things to grow, how much to like move it quick versus hold on to things so that we can have like a steady and predictable cash flow. So there's like complexity, but there's also simplicity and peace of mind in the way that it buffers in that resilience on the economic side.
Yeah, and so with the meat, are you doing just fresh meat or are you doing frozen meat as well?
It's all frozen.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
fresh meat's a whole other
fresh
level
meat's
of
a whole other
complication.
level, and just talking about efficiency, like we are set up, we process all of our birds on farm, and we're set up to do that efficiently, where we can do 300 broilers in 3 hours just with like the home team. But if we were trying to sell 300 birds fresh, like that isn't really doable. So we break them down and have whole birds and put them in freezers. And then it's like, cool, like we're done with that batch and we can sit on that meat and those sales just come through. Very shelf stable in the freezer.
Yeah, and so that gives you, like in the middle of the winter, when you're dealing with a lot of, vegetables are growing slow, it's hard to have a lot of production in the winter. That, sort of like you were saying, can fill in some of that cash flow gap through December, January, February, for you to get back in March, April, May to production.
Yeah, I mean, right now, we have like $50,000 worth of meat sitting in the freezers, just like ready for the winter.
Yeah.
And like we still grow some in the winter, but that's going to be sold November through April and just keep the farm really like alive economically during that time.
And I know you don't have your numbers in front of you, but do you want to share like how that breaks out by enterprise?
Yeah.
Like, keeping in mind also that you're finishing up year 3.
Year 3.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, a goal from the start was to kind of move quickly in scaling to where we wanted to be long term, and so we've accomplished that. I think still like each enterprise is pretty small scale on its own, but the whole picture makes a robust farm economy. So across all enterprises, this year we're projected to gross just over 300,000. The way that looks is about 130 of that is off of the half-acre market garden. Within the calendar year, about 80 to 100 of that is the poultry, both the broilers and the turkeys that we raise. And then we have these like sideline enterprises too, like the pork, events and education, which is still like relatively small, but the rest is kind of made up in the less significant parts of the farm, but there's enough diversity there that it brings that whole number to about 100 or 300,000 for the year.
And then of that, you're able to pay yourself roughly.
Yeah. So I mean, we Lyric and myself both are taking $2,000 a month paid to us from the farm, which, like when you break that out, $24,000 a year, it doesn't sound like a great salary, but the farm covers our rent as overhead because like the house is on the farm and it's paid for by the business, so that's not a personal expense. Things like our gas bill, most of the places we go are farm related, so that's business expense. We produce 90% of the food that we eat because we also raise the pigs and sheep, and like we have this diverse diet that we're producing. So our personal expenses are like extremely low, and $2,000 each a month is enough to save money, like put away personal savings as well.
Yeah, and then you have a crew of
there's three of us. There's 3 additional folks, So there's 5 total.
5 in total, yeah. And then after all of that, you're able to still you're still profitable, like beyond what you're paying yourself and your employees, like everybody's making a good living. And then you all still have some amount of profit at the end of the year right now, right? Yeah,
we're looking this year at like around like a 10% margin on the year across the whole farm. So, like grossing $300K, somehow we're spending, I mean, you can break it all down, but we end up spending like $280K of that on direct enterprise stuff, like buying feed and fixing tools and equipment. Like there's that, and then there's just the overhead of labor and rent and all the bits and bobs. We also manage 44 acres, so there's like cost associated with just like tending and stewarding that big of a piece of land. So like I think the enterprises directly, they net very healthy, and some of our costs are a bit high because of like the context of the scale of the whole piece of land as well. But we're bringing home a net profit at the end of the year after paying ourselves and employees.
And is that net profit, is that going towards back into the business right now still?
Yeah, that's like the wisest place to put it, as we're still, because we're transitioning right now from building a farm pretty much from scratch to, okay, now things are in place and our feet are underneath us. How can we improve things to like increase that revenue and at the same time bring workload down? Because within all of this, we've managed almost totally consistently like 8-hour work days, 5 days a week for everyone. And we're trying to push the envelope of like, can we in year 7, for example, have more revenue and everyone only works 6 hours a day? Like, it's ambitious and lofty, but if that's kind of our North Star, it informs the decisions we make in order to get there. So that's kind of the types of things we're trying to reinvest profit into.
Yeah, that was the other thing I was thinking is when, like, those numbers may sound high to some people, but obviously if you work 16-hour days, like, you could get there.
Right.
But what you're saying is you're working closer to, like, 8-hour days. Are you doing 6 days a week or are you doing 5 days a week?
5 days a week.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, like, there's parts of that where, like, if we worked more, could we produce more? But we try to find that balance of, like, what's good enough and where can we say, like, let's just take a step back and, like, not work more because it is good enough, right? Like, how far do we want to push the envelope just for the sake of pushing the envelope on it if it's costing us too much time?
Yeah, and I mean, the other side of that, too, is when you give yourself all day, you take all day.
Right.
And when you give yourself 8 hours, you only take 8 hours to do the same amount of work.
Right.
And so, like, sure, I mean, at some point, like, when you're working a 12 or 16-hour day or whatever, like, you wear out. You're just not as efficient.
Yeah.
And you burn out faster.
And you make mistakes.
And you make mistakes that end up costing you more time.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. So I think that's a really important point. And I like this idea of getting it down to 7, 6 hours.
Yeah. And it didn't start like that day one, year one.
No,
like,
sure.
To start the farm, I pretty much I worked a lot of hours for most days for like 20 consecutive months.
Sure.
But it was like always with that goal of kind of, I have to do this to get to that point of the 8-hour day, 5-day week, right? Like we had to kind of push that in order to make that achievable in a short time frame.
And I can't think of many businesses in general whose owners work like a normal work week in general, like any business. And so for especially in farming where it's like things are happening, in the daytime, the later afternoons and all that stuff, like that, it's calling to you to be worked on all the time, in the same way those other industries are, but you're finding a way of not having to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of that was we got really fortunate in year 2, hired on Zach, who's our garden manager, and we have kind of like a flipped management employee ratio where the Lyric, Zach, and I are very lateral in responsibility and decision making, and we have 2 crew members where like often you see kind of an inverse ratio, fewer management, more employees.
Right.
But having the like mental load distributed evenly across folks who kind of have the same sense of responsibility and autonomy, like there's just so much redundancy, right? Where since we are all at the management level, if I need to take a Thursday off kind of unexpectedly, like I know they can handle the broilers, like Zach's running the gardens, and I can kind of have peace of mind to take that day. And vice versa. Like if we all know enough about the whole farm picture that any one of us can pick up the slack on the management side. And so like it's an interesting thing. It wasn't really part of the plan, but it's shaken out like that. Where I think a big part of the reason that's possible is that more even distribution of management level, ownership level responsibility.
Yeah, and speaking of the plan, I think a good maybe place to finish it is you talked in the beginning kind of about making, like, starting out with a 1-year plan, 5-year plan, 10-year plan. Like, are you on track for where you want to be at that? You're at year 3, so you're halfway to your 5-year mark. Like, do you all feel like you're on track to where you thought you'd be?
I'd say so. I mean, as good as you can hope, because, a plan's just a plan. I think the way that we're seeking to transition, right? There's year 1 through 5, and then there's year 5 through 10, and the plan there is to continue these annual enterprises that are like the backbone of the farm as the more perennial systems are like actually starting to show some maturity. And I think what we're aiming to get to by year 5 is a level of like stability and predictability with the income and ecology that we're like demonstrating thus far. Because in year 3, it was like, okay, this is the benchmark of what we can and want to achieve. So by year 5, the goal is this just like replicable, which from like a workload standpoint, it feels replicable. From a planning standpoint, it feels replicable. But having that assurance by year 5 to say like, yep, it is for sure annually replicable. And then kind of like taking that level of stability into year 5 through 10 to kind of take on perhaps a bit more risk in like transitioning some of the farm. We're already doing some things like setting up a tree nursery on the farm because we're really interested in perennials long term. So we've set up infrastructure to like propagate trees and have plant sales and just like dabbling in those things that we're hoping can be more foundational in the later years, but kind of just getting started right now.
That's cool. Well, Noah, this has been a blast.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on.
For sure. Yeah, it's been good to talk.
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
And who's gonna wake you in the morning?
All right, I hope you enjoyed that chat with Noah. Make sure to follow Wild East Farm on Instagram and subscribe to their channel, Small Scale Revival, on YouTube. Don't forget, No-Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. You can learn more about how to do that in the show notes. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor this show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music and Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear.
Teach me how.
If you are looking for some gifts this holiday season, you can pick up a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at no-tillgrowers.com, or a hat. We have many to choose from, but you should do that soon so that it actually gets there by the holidays. And that also goes to supporting our work. So big shouts to that. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of November, you get a shout out in the show. So big shout outs today to Patrick Weaver. Shouts to Patrick Weaver, always keeping us going on Fridays. All right, so you will remember that our heroine in this week's story, Mildred, decided to take matters into her own hands when she kept missing the show that she wanted to watch on Broadway in New York City. But anyway, she decided to do her best to protect New York City from all the invasions that were occurring, from sea creatures to monster infestations, aliens, all of it. And as you will remember, Mildred had a little run-in with some toxic sludge as a child, which had inadvertently gifted her a unique power. Mildred McQuills was her name, had quills, literal quills. She could literally pop quills out of her back to, like shoot them at people, because that's normal. But that's not all. That's not the only gift she got. She also could fly. And as a bonus talent, Mildred was also like a supernaturally exceptional dancer. But that didn't really come into play or, come in too handy in this particular story. But the flying and the quills did, as she started to fight off every new invasion until the construction crews could finally fully fix her beloved Broadway. Mildred also, took the time to clean up the places dumping toxic sludge into the Hudson to help prevent some of these mutations in the future. Aliens, obviously, she just had to fight those whenever they came. But anyway, after a year or so of hard work, Mildred finally earned her chance to see the show she'd been dreaming of, The Little Shop of Horrors. All right, thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you on Monday. Bye.
And who's gonna keep you when storms are coming?